Sam Comanche here reporting for Channel 7 News. I guess I'm not really reporting, but I'm sitting in a library for another Know Your Candidate segment. This time I have Kymberly Vollmers with me. Kymberly, nice to finally meet you, formally meet you. I've seen you out in public before at different events, but now I'm finally meeting you and I appreciate you choosing such a quiet spot for us to speak. Also a whiteboard, so we might just doodle some notes or do some drawings on this at some point just to make use of it. But we're going to start out with the one question I ask everyone at the very top of these interviews is, tell me about yourself. What do people need to know about Kymberly Vollmers?
Great. Well, I grew up in Reading, and I have loved living here most of my life, and I went to Enterprise High School, and a funny little thing about me going to Enterprise at the same time as my husband, but I did not know him until we met in our 20s, and now we're married with 4 kids. I have 4 daughters. And,
the opposite of my family.
Boys.
4 boys, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm very much a girl mom, and I love it. So we moved back here from Los Angeles in 2010 because we wanted to raise a family, and we definitely did not want to do it in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. So Reading has always been home in my heart, and all the things that I've loved to do around here are nature-based and just community-based in the sense of it's things that anyone could bring their kids to and participate in. So I love the small-town feel of Reading. I love how much there is to do outdoors, and I feel like Reading's always been home.
How long did you guys live in LA for?
We lived there for 5 years.
Okay. But most of your life has really been up here in NorCal and in Reading.
Yes.
So then with that said, as someone, I feel like I've been talking to a lot of Reading natives. It's an overwhelming amount of Reading natives that are running for city council, which I think is a cool thing, a neat thing. People wanting to get involved with politics in their hometown. But with Reading as it is currently, as we sit here in September 2022, what do you think Reading's biggest weakness or biggest thing that needs to be fixed is?
It is such a complex question because there's so many facets that add to how we're impacted every day. So number one thing I think I would want to see change and improve rapidly, as quickly as we could, is jail space. And I know that that's on the county, but I think that the city and the people that live here could show a lot more support and advocate and stand behind that move. It would take the city to do it as well.
Right, so you got to get a more unified front.
Yes,
it is a county issue, but
yes,
if it's not feeling like it's being pushed by anyone else, then...
If we don't get in line and support unified, then our police force feels it, our fire department feels it, our citizens feel it. So we absolutely need to be unified in that.
Jail space is a different answer than I've heard. So that's the first time I've heard that answer. So I appreciate you being original. It's not just saying crime.
Yeah.
Although I guess it was kind of tied together.
I also don't think that my answer needs to necessarily be that I'm the solution.
Sure.
Or that the city can be that solution. If it's the thing that's most impacting the city and the thing that when people live and work here that they see that they would want to improve, that's a weak point, it's absolutely that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so the opposite of that now is, what is Reading's biggest positive? What do you think is Reading's got going for it right now?
Yeah, I feel like our positive is that we have that small town feel and we have an acceleration pacing for growth. During a time where a lot of people would anticipate shrinking back or failure in their economy, we're doing very well.
We are, and I actually did a report on that not that long ago, a couple months ago, about how Reading is one of the fastest growing cities, I think in the country actually, was according to some surveys, some studies, and a big part of that is we were open for so long during COVID. We're one of the more open places in California, without question, in our state. So yes, economic growth, I think it's pretty obvious everywhere you look. Your background, and you just gave a little bit of a brief background about who you are, but this isn't your first time running for some political office. You ran for District 1 Supervisor. And so I want you to touch on that, what motivated you to do that, why you bowed out for the actual election and endorsed Aaron Resner, current council member. Talk about that process for me so people understand.
So I've been participating by going to the Capitol for years now and advocating for families through organizations that unify and collaborate their efforts in lobbying the Capitol for homeschooling and charter schools so that they keep funding and that they stay a useful part of the educational system and don't get ducked out to where it's difficult to do. And there's things that really would impact the community for homeschooling that if they got funding that normally you would get if you put your child in school, because you don't. So if you're part of a charter, you do, but some of those things get taken away over time, and the legislature has a lot of influence in that. So advocating for that to remain the same. And then I just always keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the state legislature and watching locally as well. And I feel like we're in a point of momentum and transition. And a huge motivating factor for me is knowing that there was the potential for my husband to change his job very soon. So for the last 12 years or so, he's worked all throughout the state, and his traveling made it to where I was alone with the kids. And nearly like a single mom, but I would, kudos always to single mothers because they have a different type of hardship that I would never claim to have when I have also a spouse. Right. But when you are alone 24/7 with your kids and you're not a working
solo
mom,
yes.
Yeah. And we have it as a priority for me to stay home with the kids. Mm-hmm. And so in that season that I've been in, I typically would quickly justify that I'm not going to step out of that role. But the transition that's happening with government, with awareness of the public and their participation, I felt like it was vital that I take the opportunity to represent the people that I live around.
So would you say then that's why, as someone that doesn't have prior experience in politics, you have your finger on your pulse, you stay involved with things at a state level, is that what makes you qualified to hold a council position?
I feel like the accumulation of other jobs that I've had as well. When I graduated high school, I worked in pharmacy for years. I was a pharmacy technician. Later on, I ran my own business, transitioning my career and background into cosmetology. So I felt like with the things that matter most to me for my family in the future, not just for my family, but everyone that lives around us, our neighbors, that if people who are regular, not to call myself average, but the average person who lives and works here aren't represented. If I look at who is representing me and I feel like there's a detachment or there's not a connect directly to where they would be my voice, I can't look and or expect someone else to represent me necessarily. I think that it's awesome that there's 10 people running, and I think that more people should participate in government. I don't have a belief that there's those people who run and me or us. There is we the people.
You talked about 10 candidates.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of turnover though, because it's 3 seats obviously that are being filled. We have change in supervisor. There's a lot of political shift in Shasta County. And there's been a lot of, what's the correct word I want to use here? Hostility? Tension yeah. Between, I don't even know if I want to say political parties so much, it's just people. Mm-hmm. It's not even this side and that side, it's just people mad at each other in our county. I personally, even though this isn't about me, but I think of that as a huge issue. Across the world, yes. Across the country, yes. It's an issue.
Yes.
But to zone in on it here in Reading, with these people coming in, these new faces, likely a lot of new faces, how important is it to kind of squash what's been happening and move forward, like you had said earlier, like as a united front?
Right. I think that it's vital because for any progress to occur, there has to be a unified position. And I think that sometimes what happens in distance and in concept in their minds of who people are comes together when they actually sit at the table face to face. So I'm hoping that fresh faces and a variety of backgrounds will allow that to facilitate change in a positive way so that progress isn't stifled, because we need work still to be done and progress needs to continue, and that requires relationships with people, whether they're new or already formed.
And speaking of relationships with people, the other 9 candidates that are running, do you know them very well, or like what's your relationship with any of them?
I have met Tanessa in the past because she participates civically, sure. And I have seen her around. I met her years ago at Republican Women's Federated event. They had some type of lunch event, and then I met her at a fundraiser for Megan Dolly. So it's kind of just in passing, but I have been around her only at the recent, there was a forum for the Real Estate Association.
Okay.
But she's very kind and very friendly, so.
And I wasn't, yeah, and so you know Tanessa, but
Yeah.
just looking at it from general with these other people, as you had said, it's about building relationships. But if you don't know the other two people that are joining you at council saying you get the position, and you don't know the other people that are still going to be remain seated, which I believe are Julie Winter and Mark Mazzano, how well do you know those two?
I've met Mark Mazzano this year, actually in February, when I was running the last election.
Sure.
So that was the first time I met him, and I've been around him several times in the community now. And I've met Jordan Valenzuela in the community.
Mm-hmm. But Julie Winter is the other council who's not.
I don't know Julie Winter yet.
Right.
And I did watch yesterday, the day before, I watched the council meeting at home because I had my kids. And when I was watching that, listening to her speak the other day, I appreciated her delivery and the things that she had to add. So many times when I'm watching and when I'm in the meetings, I'm watching not just for the dynamic of how they're looking at their role for a municipality in the city and representing the people, but just how they are to one another.
Sure.
It's something that I observe. I am a very observant person, so not necessarily things that impact me personally, and I have a thick skin, so it's not that I would take things personal. I wouldn't walk in with assumptions of anything, because everyone has observations in the city of what they may think, but I would wait till I'm sitting at the table to form those opinions and thoughts.
You're going somewhere with that I was going to ask, but to finish this thought of mine, this question of mine, is how are you going to connect with, if again you get on council, the four other people are people you don't really have a relationship with, other than meeting them in the community in recent months because you've been campaigning both for supervisor and now for council. How do you get on a working status relationship quickly with those people? What's the goal? What's the key?
My goal wouldn't change at all, different than who I am every day in my life, which is I think that if you show up and be authentic of who you are, you give permission to other people to be authentic in who they are, and it would take time.
So be authentic, be you.
Yeah,
Authenticity.
there's no magic answer, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Also, just as a quick aside, in the event that he sees this, as we're mentioning Mark Mazzano, as you met him this year, I guess I technically met him this year as well, but talking about people that like to be out in the community, Mark Mazzano, he loves being out in the community, getting the attention. I think he's just honored if he watches this to know that we're talking about him.
Yeah.
That's for you, Mark. That's a good dude. But you alluded to, assumptions you can make about the council. And there are some, what's the word I want to use for this? There has been some shady, Michael DeQuisto, who's on the council, said it just like this, it's shady. Some of the business and deals that the council have done, specifically land deals, and people aren't exactly happy with some people on council currently in Reading for the way they've operated and the way they've handled certain situations, and I'm being very vague on purpose. But talk about starting on like a clean slate, because it's going to be relatively a clean slate for council, 3 of the 5 new faces. How important is it to start fresh and kind of push away from what the council's been doing and the reputation they've kind of built for themselves, this current council?
I think that when we begin fresh, we have the opportunity to have the community understand and take part in such a way that we go by what the policy is and what the law is, and there is no deviation from that. So in order to be a voice for the people, when you've gotten the vote, it's your responsibility to continue to be a voice for the people for those next 4 years.
Transparent.
Within the parameters of the law, and to not deviate from that, yeah.
You get to the point, I'll tell you that. I can run on a sentence forever, Kymberly. You've come in ready and just set with this.
I'm telling you, I spend my time reading things like, I've been wanting to for a while, and I just started reading Common Sense by Thomas Paine.
Yeah.
And I read a lot of old history books and so many things that comment on the full picture of politics is not just that there's those people who run things, but each one of them are an individual that we have to have confidence in, that they carry emotional intelligence as well as intelligence and that integrity that you want to see in them throughout the entire time. And so through life, like I'm 41, And through life, when I was 25, I had the belief up until 25 that everyone had common sense.
I'm sorry.
Because I have a very high level of common sense pertaining to when I evaluate something, I don't make a knee-jerk reaction. I want all the information. I want to look at it from different points of view. I want to hear people who disagree with me before I make a decision. And so when I was 25, I thought, man, it's such a shame a lot of people lack common sense. And it caused a lot of problems for society. So it is now my position that the things that are in place to help us should be utilized to their maximum capacity and not compromised.
You lead me to another good question there. I'm just thinking of stuff off the top of my head because we're moving, like I was saying, we're moving fast, and I appreciate it. We won't, I try not to spend too much time in the library. Just ask my mom or dad. I think they're surprised I don't even know where this place is.
I'm here all the time.
Are you?
Yeah.
It is cool. These rooms are cool.
Yeah.
Study rooms. You hear a little bit of the piano playing next door. What would you say your biggest strength is?
As a person?
As a person.
My biggest strength is
common sense.
My resiliency. No, my mom said of me at one time, and it stuck with me, that when I stood in line for tenacity, I went through the line twice. So
that's a good line. That's a good.
And I'm like, it is true. And people can criticize so easily, and you can take that on as your identity. And I feel like resiliency is something that we all need. And in failure, you learn. So something that I believe in is that if I have a goal in mind, and if I have something rooted in me of truth that matters, my position really won't waver much from what is just and what is right. Like, I very much have a justice-seeking heart, and I think that I carry that in everything I touch.
Really, just cruising through this interview. This is going to easily be the shortest interview I've done so far, and I'm not opposed to it. I love it. I can go do other things. You can go do other things.
Yeah.
But as I always like to conclude these things, final thoughts, final comments, what people really need to know and understand more than anything else about you and why you'd make a good Reading City Council person, man, woman.
Yeah, I believe that I would do an amazing job representing the city because I am an anomaly in the sense of I am not a business owner. I don't have my foot in things that would be shifting or changing based on my vote. There's not a personal advantage for me to run necessarily other than civic duty, that I think that every person should check with themselves and one time in their life or another and see how they can serve their community. So I also think that I want to constantly educate people. So being that I would be a council member, as I progress in that position over time, I would use my knowledge and use my exposure to things that maybe if you're working your job or raising your family you wouldn't necessarily be exposed to of the city, all of the things that serve our community, and I would want to turn that around and use it for education for our youth, because the disenfranchised person or the person who feels like they're not represented, they have no voice, I think it begins when they're very young, because generationally their parents might feel that way. So I want to use my knowledge and my experience to go share with youth the importance of their participation in community and in civics going forward. So it's not just a one role. I feel like it will be a multifaceted role for years to come.
And then looking ahead, we got obviously till November is the election, so we have a couple months. But for people that want to get to know you more than just this interview, what kind of fundraising events or things do you have coming up? You have a website, I'm sure.
My website is Vollmers2022.com. And
I think I can remember that.
Yeah. My fundraiser that I think is going to be super fun is going to be at Raw on September 24th. And we are going to have a painting class. I am going to teach everyone and walk them through a painting, because something that is unified of struggle for everyone, no matter your background, is to not criticize yourself through when you're expressing through something creative. So I thought I could share 5 minutes of what I see of vision for the city and my role in that. The rest of the time we will get to know each other. People will meet people they don't know yet, and we all have the same handicap coming into something where we create, because everyone struggles to not have perfectionism or feel like they bring faults to it or you mess up, and so we're going to work through those things while we talk about politics and have sushi.
That's unique.
Yeah.
That's unique.
Like,
And
I don't want to ask people for something when I'm giving nothing.
Okay, I like that. And I've never really thought of painting from that perspective of like, it's a reminder that, you can't be perfect, everyone makes mistakes. Because that's a reason I've never done painting. It's like, I would be so bad at painting.
I've had so many people tell me they would be terrible at it, and the number one thing people say is that I can't draw a stick figure, and I'm like,
Yeah, it's a classic one.
you can create.
Super S's. I know it's super S's.
You can create, yes.
You do a million of super S's.
That's hysterical.
And if you're painting and you get wine, which is like a classic
or a
combination.
sake bomb.
Or a sake bomb, you're expecting to now paint within the lines, there's no chance. There's just no chance.
Yeah, it will be amazing. We're gonna, Mount Lassen will be the backdrop of the painting, and there's a bear in there, and there's trees, and it's, anyone can do
So
it.
September 24th, that's a Saturday.
Saturday.
And then
2 to 4.
2 to 4, I was gonna say, what's the time slot? All right, so before it gets too crazy at Raw on a Saturday night. Well, cool. You can go do that September 24th. Go visit our website, Vollmers 2022. I almost said 2020. I think I did that in a recent interview. I forgot what year it was. 2022.
2022.
Crazy. We're already in 2022. Anyway, Kymberly, I really appreciate the time. This speedy 20-minute interview. In and out, we're on. I love it. Love the efficiency. That's my favorite type of thing.
Yeah.
Just be efficient. So thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
Sam.